What's golden, y'all? It's Brian with a better late than never live stream. Welcome back to Blurting While Dad. So, on tonight's episode, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking some SpaceX stuff and I guess how to make a trillionaire. Like, if you really don't have one, how you can just rig the entire um, economy and rig everything to make it happen. We're going to talk about a little bit of adult contemporary hip hop, why ADHD is not a superpower, and whatever else kind of crosses my mind. So that's what I have on tonight's episode. So if you guys are in the chat or whatnot, I'm gonna let the chat start filtering in here. For those that don't know, my name is Brian. Um, I wear a lot of different hats. Um, in my day job, day life, I'm a marketer, marketing nerd. I help business owners figure out systems that make sense to bring in the clients they want. By night, I am a black nerd. Well, but not even by day or by night. Like 24 hours, 7 days a week, I'm a black nerd. That's typically what I do. Um, and Blurting While Dad is where the intersection or where I get to talk about politics and comic books and parenting and all the other things that interest me. So that's what I have. Like I said, I'm gonna let some of my chat start filtering in now that I'm live. Um, let's talk about earlier what I was dealing with a little bit earlier. It was really interesting. So I'm on threads, kind of going back and forth about the Voting Rights Act or whatnot, and um, dude hops on there, and basically his premise is gerrymandering's always been about politics and political parties and not about race, and it's ridiculous to say anything else. And so my contention is, what is the political makeup of the parties? And so he does, like, for whatever reason, he needed to actually go and use AI to figure this out. It's a pretty obvious question. And he shows it. And basically, his entire thing is it doesn't matter what the racial it doesn't matter what the racial content of the parties is. The only thing that matters is who gets elected. And I'm saying, but if you decrease the power of one party that seems to have all the black and brown and LGBTQ people, you're going to decrease their voting power. That's the purpose of it. That's how it's kind of structured. When you have a two-party system, well, it's not a two-party system, but when you have a primarily dominated by two parties, most people that are voting are falling into one block or the other block. And typically, the way that our political party system is structured, with the two major ones that draw all, the big dogs, um, one is essentially white folks, and then the other one is everybody else. And that's kind of how the political party system, or this iteration of political party system, has kind of turned out. And I go to this page and I'm sitting there going back and forth. And I'm like, let me scroll this page, make sure that I'm not interacting with the troll or whatnot. And lo and behold, I mean, this dude has a bunch of white supremacist memes on his uh, Threads account. And so now I'm like, I'm not going to engage in a good faith argument with a bad actor. And so immediately I switch into my condescending asshole phase, which I'm pretty good at putting that on right now. So this dude is getting offended because he said that I am, how did he put it? It's the argumentation thing where I am name calling, essentially trying to debase his argument. I'm like, I'm not name calling to debase your argument. I'm name calling you because you're a bad actor. You got all these white supremacist memes on your page, but I'm supposed to believe that we're going to engage in a good faith conversation about uh, voting habits and representation and at the ballot box and things like that. We're not about to do that, because I mean, your page already kind of told me who you are. It's just an interesting thing, and it's one of those interesting interactions that you encounter when you run into people online. Like, people act like what they post isn't, like, you can't see it as a demonstrated record of what they actually believe, or what ideas that they support or are vehemently against. If I go to your page and we're sitting there talking about racial politics and how politics plays into racial dynamics in this country, if I go to your page and see nothing but a bunch of white supremacist memes, um, I'm instantly saying, "Oh yeah, you're a bad actor. We can't have a serious conversation." Why would I have a serious conversation with somebody who believes the way that you do? And um, saying I'm attacking your character, like I'm attacking this dude's character because he has a bunch of like literal white supremacist memes on his page. Um, and he's saying, and I can't forget the argumentation speak of it because I'm kind of in the flow of it. But more or less, you know, I'm a bigot myself, accept defeats, I turn to personal attacks, blah, 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 blah. Um, like you're not a good faith actor, you know. And why would what attacking the person? That's what it is. Attacking the person. Why would we have a good faith argument? How do you call it? It was the ad hominem attacks. That flipped my mind. But anyway, he says I resorted to ad hominem attacks. I own it because at that point, once I realized like I'm arguing with white supremacists, there's no seriousness. I'm doing it for my own entertainment at that point. But he was mad, and so that was the interaction we had. And I think it's kind of a reflection on where I am now versus where I used to be, where I used to feel compelled to sit there and argue with bigots and try to get to their better nature or at least look good on the internet and stuff. I ain't doing that shit anymore. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. You can be a bigot on your page. You can be if you are on your social media profile, I am not going to sit there and engage in a real weighty conversation about litigating my humanity to an absolute, like if you got white supremacist memes on your page and then you're saying, well, these are ad hominem attacks. You're a white supremacist, bro. Like you have a meme on your page that says, basically saying, there's plenty of evidence showing that white folks are supreme. It's crazy work. But the internet's a weird place, bro. Like it's not even interacting with real people at this point. I think people make memes their persona and forget that the memes do have meanings to a degree. So anyway, let's talk Elon and the amazing the magic $1 trillion that appeared, that just manifested out of a company that has lost money pretty much every quarter that they've been in existence. Now, I'm not going to say that SpaceX is fake. It's not. It's a real company. They were existing before Elroy took over. They were, he moved in and kind of decided to put them under his brand, essentially. The rockets are real. Starlink is a real thing. Government contracts are all real things. We can argue the merits of receiving government contracts and things along those lines, and the bidding process when you got, favorable, when you got the rub from the president. We can talk all that stuff. The company has strategic value, but the valuation was crazy, bro. The valuation of SpaceX was absolutely insane. There was nothing that can justify that. And I've been in the stock game, done, I do the investment thing. I understand how the game runs, right? That IPO was crazy. It was wildly overinflated. And the problematic nature of that Starlink or SpaceX IPO is this. The size of the valuation means that company is automatically one of the largest cap companies in the world, I think. Like instantly. If it's not number one, it's close there. It's close to it. And what that means is a lot of these ETF kind of funds or ones that buy the big cap stocks automatically are going to automatically buy SpaceX. And so there's a lot of people that are inadvertently going to be investors in SpaceX. They're not going to have any say in the matter. If they are doing, if they're doing the, get all the big cap funds and that's the ETF we're running and stuff like that. And so you're taking a bunch of people and forcing them to be investors in this company that has this inflated $1 trillion price tag to it. And when that thing corrects, all of these people are going to be bag holders, all of them. A lot of people whose retirement accounts that they don't actively manage, they just say, big cap funds, just go for the ones with the biggest cap market caps. Those people are about to get hosed, bro. And it's predatory because the people that helped inflate this valuation, they knew exactly what this was going to be. They knew that there's no way that valuation is going to stay in the test of time. They know that the correction is a real thing. They know that as soon as SpaceX hits the market and sits there for a couple of days, that correction is going to be harsh. And you forced a lot of people to be bag holders just because the size of this stock, the size of the IPO. And so that's my problem with the valuation side of it is people aren't really getting an opportunity to opt out. And I think that's the entire point with the world being run by billionaires and now on paper trillionaires. You never get a chance to really opt out of this world. If you're a business owner, you can't really opt out of social media at this point. Like you can't opt out of playing the Zuckerberg game or the Elon Musk game or the whoever is in charge of the major platform game. You have to have a presence on there to a degree. You have to have a presence on Google. You can't opt out of any of this stuff. And so right now, a lot of these billionaires and trillionaires are making this world where your average citizen cannot opt out of their services if they want to have a standard of living. Like I said, as a business owner, as a marketer, I understand it. You can't just say, I'm not going to be on social media at all as a business owner unless you have one of these really strong word of mouth businesses that's been around for a number of years. It's very difficult to establish that without having a social media presence. You don't get to opt out of Zuckerberg. You don't get to opt out of Elon in your retirement account now, essentially. Like you're not getting a chance to say, I don't want to do business with you. Your dollars don't get to decide anything. It doesn't get to decide who you're doing business with and who you're not, because you have all these monopolies running it and a handful of people at the top getting all the money. That's the crazy part. You could say, well, I don't like Larry Ellison or the Ellison family. I'm going to opt out of products and goods, but they own half the televisions. they own half the television networks. And it's like this labyrinth to figure out who actually owns this thing. It's like, oh, so Larry Ellison's son actually owns this. Well, I don't want to deal with Larry Ellison's son and Paramount and all this stuff. I'm gonna go to TikTok. Well, the Ellisons essentially own TikTok too. You don't get a chance to opt out. All your money is getting funneled to them regardless. You don't get a chance to say. That's what I'm saying, y'all. And so I'm kind of off my thing, but the SpaceX IPO bothers me because it looks like a real company being priced with some with a bunch of mythology around it. Okay. Like I said, a lot of the stuff is real. They have a real value proposition. They manufacture real products for the market. Okay. The gap is it has massive losses. The company can show massive losses and still get valued like it already owns the future. Okay. Investors are they're not just buying a business, they're buying this prophecy coming down from the mountaintops that SpaceX is going to build space stations and all this other stuff. And it's always, yeah, we'll get to it next year. They're buying Elon as the leader of this future that they have imagined. Rockets, satellites, AI, defense, telecom, Mars, civilization on Mars, they all get rolled into one story. And the reality is, landing on Mars is not necessarily a feasible thing. Like it can be done. The unfortunate soul that goes is a one-way trip. And you still have to deal with the radiation and all kinds of other things. And once you get past Mars, there's really nothing out there for us to keep us alive. You start getting pelted with that deeper space radiation or whatnot. Once you get outside the heliosphere, now I'm getting into my science nerd stuff. Where now we got the Voyager probes that are exiting the heliosphere and stuff like that. It's going to be a while. There's really nothing out there. Space, everything in space is designed to kill you. But we are going to colonize Mars and the moon. When the entire, like, it's one accident away, it's one catastrophic accident away from wiping out all the people that are on that space station or in the space shuttle on the way to Mars or on the moon base or whatever. Like, people are buying into this idea that we are going to colonize space. And that's what the $1 trillion valuation is. And it's a great sounding fantasy. But why? Like, the reality is, what the idea is, we're going to foul the planet up so much that our only option is going to be escape to the stars. Everything in outer space is designed to kill us. There's nothing close here. There's nothing in our cosmic neighborhood. There is nothing relatively close to us. You can fit every planet, depending on what their orbit is. You can fit every planet, depending on where the orbit is, between us and the moon. You can fit every planet in between us and the moon. This stuff is not close. It's not around the corner. And right now, deep sea, like the deepest part of the ocean, is taking us out, bro. Like, we haven't even mastered going underwater. I'm fascinated by what is it, that Ocean Gate thing? I did the entire thing about it earlier this summer or last summer. The Ocean Gate thing is fascinating to me. Just because it shows how ill-equipped we are to deal with extreme environments as human beings. But we're going to send people to the moon. Okay, that's cool, I guess. You want to you basically want to build data centers in outer space. Like, I guess that's what the pitch was. We're going to take these data centers and build them in outer space. So I'll say, so it's not just doing stuff in space. With all the capital they raise, there's a lot of terrestrial stuff before they even get to space. But I think that's the hook, man. I know, and you know, because you've been somebody who's in charge. Potential is really sexy. Potential is addictive, and you can invest in potential to your own bankruptcy. You can drive yourself physically bankrupt, morally bankrupt, bankrupt in your career. You can absolutely deplete every store of resources you have investing in potential. This is all potential. And I know IPOs are mostly potential, but this is a high level of potential that we're talking about. And I feel like, like the $1 trillion valuation, people are going to have to eat that when that stock adjusts. And the bag holders are typically going to be the people who have managed funds that they don't pay attention to or don't necessarily have any direct control over. The ones that buy those big cap stocks, when SpaceX does the adjustment, they're going to get hosed. They're going to be the bag holders, and they don't even really have a choice. It's way too much hype, and it's way overvalued, and it's almost like this weird conspiracy. Like, Elon said, I'm going to be a billionaire, and all these financial houses said, yes, you will be a billionaire. And so what we're going to do is we're going to inflate the value of this and base it on a bunch of potential. And that's all we're going to do. And we're going to sell it to the public. So we can have all the hype, because that's what it was. All this hype and marketing around, he's going to be the first trillionaire on paper, a $1 trillion company valuation. But it's all based on smoke and mirrors. And see, that's what I'm saying. You chose not to invest in SpaceX, but the ETF will. And a lot of people who are, who just have their retirement accounts, they have somebody managing it or whatnot, they're going to end up being the bag holders on this, because you can't necessarily opt out. If it's one of the big cap stocks, you cannot opt out of this. And I think that they kind of, they're basically understanding that a lot of, like, people who are retirees are their liquidity. to start out with. Amazon took 15 years to be profitable. And that's what I'm saying. I don't know, because here's the gambit. Right now, we don't even really know what Tesla's valuation is, because right now, Tesla, um, on paper, listening to what they're saying about it and what they're evaluating Tesla as, it is the most valuable car company on the planet. Now, you and I both know how that went. It was selling those carbon credits. Um, basically, Tesla was a carbon credit vendor to the major car companies until they started building their own electric vehicles. And that's how they made all that money. People aren't running out there and buying Teslas. They can't even sell some of these things now. They just have them sitting, they're dead stock, they're dead inventory, they're just sitting there. And the valuation is still obscene for basically how much they're selling, because they're not selling these things left and right. I've seen a couple of Cybertrucks kind of puttering around in my city, and you see like people talking about they almost got their finger cut off by the door. The panels rust immediately. Some of the stuff is held on with glue. These aren't really well constructed vehicles. They're ugly. And so they're not in high demand right now. And that's what the problem is. So what is the valuation on Tesla? What do we, I'll look it up. What is Tesla's current valuation? Tesla's market capitalization is $1.5 trillion with we are doomed. We are doomed. Oh, just looking at the P&E ratio and all this is absolutely insanity. This is all witchcraft. All of it is witchcraft. All of this is based on witchcraft. There's nothing that is not really tied to anything real. And I think once you get enough money, you don't have to prove anything. Once you have enough money, people will believe anything, any magic beans that you'll sell them, they will buy. Like I said, if Tesla is worth $1.5 trillion, based on what? They're not even the best-selling cars. I don't know if they're the best-selling cars in their category. Like, I got to look that up. Tesla the best-selling car. It's the best-selling EV, but even then, I don't buy it, bro. Like, I guess 2 or 3 years it might end up being good, but most won't. And that's the problem. What if you are depending on that money in the next 2 or 3 years? Because there's some people that they don't really have 2 or 3 years to wait on this. Your retirement's going to take a haircut when everything adjusts. When the price corrects, your retirement's going to take a haircut. Okay. I need to know what, like, I guess with Tesla's valuation, my biggest problem is what is driving Tesla's valuation. And I know this isn't the most scientific way to look at it. Normally, I do a lot more research on stocks, positions that I'm actually interested in. I don't understand the math, and it's witchcraft. Sorry. I know Amazon took years to be profitable, but I did address that. But I don't think that for a while, Amazon, like, until Amazon really got its feet under it and decided we're going to be essentially a search engine for products, and we're just going to sell everything. and get into all the categories, essentially be the online Walmart. Um, when they were just an online bookstore, they were doing all right. They were doing well, but it wasn't the most profitable thing. The thing that makes Amazon a lot of their money is the fact that they own Amazon Web Services. Like, that makes a ton of money for Amazon. It's not even the main company. And the way that I think that they've spun it off is they spin every company as a subsidiary, if I'm not mistaken, or its own standalone company. So Amazon Web Services is different from this company and that company and stuff like that. But in their portfolio, Amazon Web Services is the one that's absolutely crushing it, if I'm not mistaken, because a lot of the internet is built on AWS. You're using essentially, I believe you're using Amazon services no matter what streaming platform you're using. I think they all pay into Amazon to use their delivery system and their streaming system. So, like I said, Amazon does make sense after time. When it first started, yeah, the valuation was crazy. And like I said, yeah, I understand it takes years for some of these things to be, but I'm talking about, hey, what's going on? We're talking about the SpaceX valuation and all that other fun stuff that goes along with it. Yeah, I heard Fox is buying Roku out too. So we're kind of stuck because we are a Roku family. We've been a Roku household since I got rid of cable about almost 12 years ago. And so we're like, what are we about to do now? Because we're about to get served a bunch of Fox ads, bro. I cannot afford a new TV. LOL. I get it. Right now, we're discussing the differences between Amazon's valuation, where they weren't profitable for damn near 15 years, and what we're seeing, the shenanigans we're seeing over at SpaceX, and how a bunch of people are going to be forced to eat the correction when this IPO finally does correct. Like, a lot of people who are typical retail investors are going to get left holding the bag. And at some point, we have to have some kind of conversation about how these IPOs are. A lot of times, they're robbing the public and using us for exit. I can't even talk tonight. Using us for exit liquidity. So, anyway. Yeah, Fox is buying Roku. That's going to go through because they're on good terms, right? Like right now, all you got to do is be chummy with the administration, and your merger deal, your acquisition deal is going to go through. Something wild. That is what I was doing. Yeah. And so we know, like I said, we know what the deal is. I'm not, like I said, I'm having a hard time swallowing the fact that Tesla is valued at $1.5 billion. Like, there's no way. How many Americans are staggering under the burdens of rising unemployment, high rates of inflation, disappearing social services, or an ice cream? Oh yeah, I do. Like, there's a lot of people that are struggling, but again, and this is kind of what we've built. This is the nature of the country that's been designed for us. There's a layer of this country that doesn't have to care about that at all, because it'll never impact them. They have enough money where it never impact them. And I'm not hating. I know, I've seen conversations where, there's retirees that they have enough money on the sidelines that they can go out and buy, $70,000 truck and be back up above where they were in a couple of months. So they got a free truck out of the deal. Those people don't care about rising inflation and stuff like that. And we've created a caste system. This is the American caste system. I did a live stream with a friend of mine a couple months ago about what happens when people stop believing the story that this country tells about itself. Right. So the problem is I cannot see links. And so I have to go to my the Twitch account and kind of see where this link is, because I can't click on, like, I can click on it and put it on the screen. I can't, like, click and follow the link. So tell me tell me what what the link is basically saying, because I understand um the I understand how these things parallel, but go ahead and run it down to me. Like I said, we are trapped in the American caste system, and your only objective is to climb up. Like that's the only, because you can't go down lower. If you keep going down lower, eventually you end up becoming the meat that gets stuck in the gears. Yeah, they do, because you have this ideal of carrying the family and being the caretakers, but then also having to make money to keep, having to contribute to the household, and sometimes being the primary person to support the household. That's the real thing. Um Again, I guess I think a lot of this has to do in the way that we see money in this country. A lot of it has to do with the I think Patrice O'Neill mentioned the promise of middle management. As long as you can be above somebody, I think that falls into it. I think that everybody thinks that they are going to eventually be Elon or be in the position of a billionaire to make billionaire decisions, and most people will never even escape escape to six figures in their lifetime. Um, and you have a lot of people who make $30,000 a year fighting 10 toes down, so that a South African can pocket stuff as much money, stuff as much as their money into his pockets as possible. Yeah, that's true. But also, boomers had a society that was, I mean, I know that this is unpopular sentiment to throw out there, but I'm throwing it out there. Boomers had a society that was artificially inflated artificially rigged for them to win. It was a lot of boomers came into, they had the benefit of living in a segregated society, and then living in an integrated society that was still segregated. A lot, they didn't have to compete with everybody else because it was already set up for them. Like there's a lot that went into that. And they basically built, because you can't say the same story for black boomers. There are a handful that could say that same thing, but since it was a segregated society, it wasn't for everybody. There was a narrow population of boomers. I'm gonna refer you to the book $2 a Day. um that is about how there's a lot of people that are having to functionally survive after they've paid all their bills, all their commitments. They have to figure out how to survive on $2 a day, and they're doing it, but they're not doing it in the way that a lot of people would find comfortable. I'll just leave it like that. Um, People can, but there's a narrow group of people that only is a narrow group of people, because for some people, they budgeted out that $10 a day. That might be gas. That might be money. Because I look at it like this. I'm glad my kids are teenagers now, because this is 15 years ago. We were paying, and this was cheap. Like we got a deal on it. We were paying almost what is it, $300 every couple of weeks for daycare. Like, and we didn't have the option of nobody work, like one of us staying home. Like we couldn't do that. And we both me and my wife had, you know, relatively decent paying jobs, but that was squeezing us to death. Fortunately, we had my mom was there to help out with it, because we wouldn't have made it. It's uncomfortable but true. I posted this in group of white Americans brutal. Honestly, the only thing replacing white people's capitalism. Ooh, yeah, they ain't gonna like that one. So basically, what I meant was, without the pressures of capitalism, people can have more than one kid, worrying about financial stability, meta game in their careers, and not having children. Immigrants getting paid more because there's no incentive to keep them undocumented, which prevents downward pressure on wages. And yeah, a lot of the ills that we're seeing are just reflections of the system we're living in. Like there's no such thing as a purely capitalist society. There's no such thing as a purely socialist society. All of these are different hybrids and mixes. It just depends on how they're labeled. I'm a marketer. I understand how labels can impact people's perceptions of things. Um, you know, if you want to know what raw capitalism was, look at what the drug trade was in the 80s. Look at the crack game. You talk about what the rawest, most true depiction of what capitalism was the crack era. That's raw, unfettered capitalism. And that's the kind of society that creates. Just saying. But yeah, let's pull it apart a little bit. So people are opting out, like birth rates are dropping for whatever reason. That's terrifying to people that I don't know why they care about this. The entire one the entire we're overpopulated thing is a myth. It's always been a myth. It sounds good on paper, but it was a myth. And it always leads into a eugenics argument because you're saying, okay, so who needs to stop having babies? Or who needs to be having more babies? And that always dead ends at eugenics. But people start choosing to opt out of what is supposed to be their American dream because it's a failed inheritance, right? Like you go out, you work hard, you get the job, you have the 2 point whatever kids, and society you still getting hosed because there are people that make a lot more than you that proportionately pay a lot less than you. But the burden of carrying the entire society falls on your shoulders on a tax burden basis. It's crazy. People do a cost benefit analysis, and it's like, if my goal is to make as much money, why am I going to have a kid? Right. It turns people into mercenaries. And that, again, this is it, shift in values and money worship, LOL. Here's what's happened. And I think this is where we're going to get into the racial conversation, right? What we're seeing right now is a lot of people, your typical people that were kind of excluded from this, the actual white middle class, which is always shrinking. They're forced to be in the position, in the decision-making capacity that Black and brown people have had to have their entire lives or entire existences in this country. They have to make they're having to make the same calculations. And they're struggling with that. It sucks. And they're getting a sense of how bad it sucks. It's like, no, we're not just making it up, where you have to decide between, feeding your kids or paying the light bill, or feeding yourself and feeding your kids. That's a calculation. I grew up, there's a calculation where my mom went without eating a couple of nights to make sure I had something. And there's a lot of people who historically have not been having to make that decision. Their kids are having to make that decision right now because the society's rigged in a way that just because they did everything right, got the degree or got the internship and got the job and worked their way up, they're still not making enough because the price of everything is going through the roof and it's not coming down. That's the game of inflation, right? Nothing ever really comes down. That just becomes the new baseline. And it'll either be a little bit above or a little bit below, but it'll still be that new baseline. You notice, like you notice with the increase of Christianity, white birth rates increase personally. I don't care because I'm not white. Yeah, and I think that's the other side. I'm weirded out talking about, like, I'm gonna be really transparent. I'm tired of them blaming me for it. Not stealing your men and women. I'm really weirded out by the birth rate conversation because it always slides into eugenics some way, shape, or form. Like when we start worrying about who is having what baby and all the other stuff, that's where we start falling into it. I think, I don't necessarily believe if you're poor, you shouldn't ever have kids. But if it is incumbent upon you to figure out how you're going to provide for those kids, right? You know, I'm not a big proponent of pounding the drum and saying poor people should never have kids ever, ever, ever. I'm weirded out by the conversation of who has the right to have children and who does not. I'm also weirded out by the juxtaposition of society really, really, really caring about, you know, the preborn, but once you're born, there's no services for you. They don't even want to give you school lunch. Like they don't even want to feed kids at school where they're legally mandated to be. They don't even want to do that. And so, like this entire mystique around children, I believe, is just an extension of finding a way to control uh the decisions that women make. Like, because as long as they're pre-born, they could pretend like, as long as a kid hasn't been born yet, people can pretend, but they don't even give prenatal care. Like they don't even make sure that we have a standard basis of prenatal care for everybody. So I don't know. It's always been, to me, in my estimation, it's always been a way just to control women. Is, oh, we care about your baby. We just want to make sure that we have the baby. We want the baby. We want the baby. We want the baby. And it's like, okay, so what about the care that's going to keep me alive and healthy? We don't care as long as you are here as a vessel to deliver the child. And that's what it is. And then once the child is born, we're going to cut your wick. You're not going to be able to buy no formula we're not going to give you any child care, so you go to work. We're not going to provide your kid any school lunch or anything. You're just screwed all the way around. But you should have, why'd you have a kid that you couldn't afford? Well, I mean, the entire system, like y'all, when I said I didn't want to have the kid, then there was all this social pressure to have the kid. And then I decided, then a couple of weeks, like the kid wasn't like viable, then it was under penalty of going to jail. You have to carry this pregnancy to term, because if you have a miscarriage or an abortion, we're going to put you in jail. So you essentially of saying, okay, so now you have to carry the kid to term, have the baby, and then get nothing. They don't even want to provide you care. In this debate, because I feel like I'm changing a lot of racist minds. I've given up on that. Like before you came on, I was talking about it. Like I had, changing the minds and hearts of racists. I just toy with them for my own enjoyment and move on. I don't really care if they see me as a human being. I don't really care if I make the argument that pierces their hearts and minds. I'm over that. I'm too old to do that anymore. I was on in a conversation talking about the Voting Rights Act, and how, with the political party system, the way it's set up, we got the two parties, and de facto, I know that's not the ideal for a lot of people. Just bear with me. We have the two parties. One party is all the marginalized people, and then you have the party of mostly that is largely white folks. Like, and that's the way the party systems break out. I'm sorry. That's just how it is in this country. That's how it breaks out. And dude was trying to tell me, well, gerrymandering is never about race. It's about politics. I'm like, well, what's the political makeup of, what's the demographic makeup of the parties? Well, that doesn't matter, and blah, blah, blah. And I start getting into this weird back and forth with him. I don't even know what point he's really trying to make. And then I'm like, let me see. I'll make sure that I'm not engaging with somebody who's just trolling me. Go to the page, see a bunch of white supremacist memes, like literal white supremacist memes. And instantly I'm like, I am not having a good faith conversation with a bad actor. And I turn into what I normally am when I'm engaging with racists, which is just a troll. I'm entertaining myself. And when I said, you have a bunch of white supremacist memes on your page, why would I engage with you in a good faith argument? Then all of a sudden, I was making, I was attacking his person. I was attacking his, I'm attacking his person instead of his argument, doing ad hominem attacks and blah, blah, blah. You on your page are a self-described white supremacist. Why would I engage as a black man as engage in a good faith argument with you? That doesn't make any sense. of a kid unless you're financially stable. They're mad because we listen. Right. And that's the thing though, because it's that instruction, they don't care. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. When they talk about birth rates and who has kids in this country, they don't mean you or me or anybody else. When they're talking about have more kids, have more babies, they are talking to white people, white women. That is the messaging. White men and white women, that's who they're messaging it toward. And that's why I don't like that entire who's having babies conversation, because it always steers towards that. It always steers towards that. When it comes to black and brown people, regardless of whether we have the capacity to take care of our kids or not, and whether we're actively providing for our children or not, it always turns into we have too many kids. That's how they phrase it. Hey, Maddie, what's up? We're just having a conversation about eugenics. Passive eugenics. But every time they start framing it, and like I said, there's different. There's some metatextual shenanigans going on with it, right? One, before the kid is born, it is an avenue for weirdos to control women's bodies because that's all they care about. The baby, the baby, the baby, the baby. They don't even care about the health of the mother. They won't provide you any prenatal care, no nothing. They don't do any. But the baby must be born, and then once the baby's born, now you need to take care of everything. We're not no daycare, no nothing. You're not getting no daycare. We're not even gonna pay for medical care for the kid. You cut off your WIC so you can't get any formula. And when the kid gets, we're not gonna give you any daycare. And when the kid gets in school, we're gonna fight you on free lunch. That's what it is. That's the game. And so whenever they start talking about, like when I see JD Vance with his guy liner on there, sitting on like a television show or sitting on the internet or whatever, telling people to have more babies, I know he's not talking to me. You know, we have our two kids, but I know he's not talking to people who look like me or people that are similar shades and hues of me. He's not talking to me. And they try to couch it and pretend like that's not what it is, where he's telling all Americans that, baby. He's not talking to all Americans, because there is a lot of weird Nazi-ish propaganda that worries about the homeland and the ideal family and white people having babies, blonde hair, blue-eyed babies. That's where the language comes from, and it's gross and it's weird. The fact that our government officials are having these conversations in our faces and nobody calls them out on it. Nobody says, hey, this is Nazi-ish. Oh, you're just exaggerating. No, here's the straight parallel to this. Oh, yeah. Let's talk about it. Well, and I think, and I know a lot of, we'll push back. I know a lot of black folks that are saying, I'm not having any more kids. You know, here's the thing. We've always had to make those calculations. And even when the calculations were, oh, I had this kid I can't afford, put the baby up for adoption or whatever, those are the decisions that we've been forced to make. And now middle America's is forced to make those decisions, because now the back alley abortions, or mom and dad have enough money to pay the doctor to have the procedure and won't tell the police, that's not an option anymore. And now everybody's being forced into the same boat that marginalized people have been living in for 200 years. And it also gets insidious where you realize how many black women were forcibly sterilized all the way up through the 80s, I believe. Native Americans all the way up through the 90s. Puerto Rican women. It's always been weirdly about controlling women's bodies and who has the children and who does not. So I don't like whenever the government starts talking about this kind of stuff. Is weird. Instead of saying if you have a child, regardless of who you are, we'll provide you every single resource that this government can afford to make sure that that child sees adulthood. Bye, y'all. My family's leaving me. They got tired of me yelling. No. Yeah, he's not even talking to other Catholics. My issue is the calculation should be private and respect, and that's what I'm saying. Why are we having broad conversations about who's having babies and when? Sorry, let me jump in there. It should be a personal conversation. Prisons were trying to sterilize women up until the 2000s. Right. Right. But they wanted the right kind of child, baby born. That's what the problem is. The correct baby. It has to be the correct baby born. Because, and this is not even a joke. This is not even being saying in a snarky manner. But if you are a black person who gets accused of stealing diapers wrongfully, and the police shoot at you and kill the baby, people will blame you for it, because that's what's happening in the news right now. It just happened. There's an entire black baby that's not here anymore because the parents got accused of stealing diapers, baby products. There's a baby that's not here anymore. And instead of blaming the society which created a situation where a mother has to make the decision that, or I don't, like I said, she wasn't even stealing. She got accused of stealing. Now the baby's not here anymore. I hate it here. Yeah. The one thing that is life affirming, if you ever get a chance, and this is a weird transition, suddenly right-wing people care about yeah, they never have, because they're talking about their own material comfort a lot of times, because they're falling into the disposable part of our society. The ones, people at the top have decided that are disposable. It's life affirming. One of the things and this is kind of a non sequitur, but I'm throwing it in there. If you ever want to entertain yourself, look at Europeans experiencing American food for the first time. It's really interesting. And how they're experiencing it for the first time, and they get a chance to see the optimized version of what America could actually, what this place could actually be, without having to experience any of the deleterious effects of living under this society on a day-to-day basis. It's like, yeah, you get your 2 months of holiday. You come over here, what you get, 5 days? I don't know what's worse. They're pushing. They want the right kind of babies because they see them as foot soldiers. They see them as either potential people they could stick in these bullshit jobs that they're creating, or stick into the military to go fight these wars that they want them to be in, or the very few elite of them, they can matriculate them up and be the next generation of politicians and voters that are going, the voters and politicians that are going to allow them to carry their dwindling numbers on into the future. It's perfectly fine making Americans comfortable. Right-wing group, when they call me a pussy, I got banned, like I said. Right wingers have become cowardly. I don't know. They get bold when I get the death threats, man. The right wingers really be when the death threats start filtering over to me, man. They really get, and then you say, okay, well, here's my address, or I'm here. These are the hours I'm here. You can clock in when you want. Then all of a sudden the energy goes away. But I guess I've kind of grown out of trolling right wingers as much. If I encounter them or rub up against them in my day-to-day existence is one thing. Seeking them out, I'm kind of over that side of it, because it doesn't really do anything except harden what their values are. And so I don't I don't, for my own interest. Like, I haven't even had to, because I have a pretty broad friends list on like Facebook or what. I'm an old man. I have Facebook. Sorry, y'all. I have a pretty broad coalition of people on my Facebook page across the socioeconomic, and political spectrum. But I've even had to make cuts because people are posting just the most insane right-wing conspiracy theories, and it's like, yeah, this starts tainting my feed because I'm friends with you. It starts leaking over, and they start showing me this shit. Like, I want to see it, and I don't want to see any of it. So that's what it is. Where are we at? SpaceX is about to rip a bunch of people off. And I think, how did we get down this rabbit hole of eugenics? Oh, I was talking about Elon Musk. Yeah, that makes sense. America's number one, the biggest fan of eugenics and Curtis Yarvin, and now he's a trillionaire on paper. Have you ever seen, like, I'm gonna ask y'all a question. Have you seen those folks that were, I think they were big Elon fans or whatnot? I think that's how I came across them, where they're both high IQ people, and so they've decided that they are going to make high IQ white babies. It's the weirdest shit in the world. It's all born from Elon's weird fascination with this genetic ideal that he apparently doesn't have, because he looks like he's put together with spare parts. It looks like he's actively melting at all points during the day. Have y'all seen those people? Yeah, that's the other core of eugenics. It's the weirdness. Eugenics is such a weird thing because the thing that makes a species, like the thing that makes a species rock solid, is its ability to adapt. And when you start filtering out and trying to whittle down who is born and what's not, you're actually reducing that species' ability to adapt. Elon looks like a frog, right? He looks like a frog that got like a frog human animorph or something that got trapped in between transformations. Like he got trapped in between forms and he's just among us now. Like he looks like Diggum the frog. And he's telling us about eugenics and having these perfect babies and his weird fascination with impregnating as many women as possible so that he can have his kids that he can use as he can hold them up as bulletproof, as shields when he goes out in public, because he's worried that somebody's going to assassinate him. Oh yeah, his grandfather, we talked about this one. Yeah, his grandfather, like he traveled the world to find a place where he, or am I confusing that with Peter Thiel? I think he went to South Africa so he could be a Nazi. That's why the family moved. That's why he moved the family there. We can be Nazi. We can do Nazi stuff. Errol can be a creep. His dad can be a weird, predatory creep, creep on his sister and all that. Like, is a family of rich, kind of degenerate people. Like I said, we front like it's and both sides are tied. Yeah, it's so weird when we talk about like the entire Elon thing, because there are certain things that we just conveniently forget, like the entire the records of him actually calling Jeffrey Epstein and like, hey Jeff, when's the best party, man? When can we do it? And then he's on, I've never had any conversations with that man. I thought he was disgusting. Like, but there's emails and texts like, hey man, when can we come together and get together? Like he was trying his best, and Jeffrey Epstein didn't want to have anything to do with him, which is crazy. How often do you have to be for the most degenerate, debased, disgusting, vile, despicable human being to walk the planet at the moment? Because there's always a new one. To not have he doesn't want to have anything to do with you. Running a lot of, and see, I believe that a lot of his stuff, like his grudge against U.S. aid, was really driven by the role U.S. aid played, because they did use U.S. aid as another arm of warfare in the United States. It was a lever that they could use to leverage social and economic policies out of countries that they wanted. And he saw them as interfering in South Africa, and saw it as U.S. aid being one of the factors that they used to uproot the apartheid system in South Africa. And he's always carried a torch for that. They disguised it as that, but that's what his target was. Yeah, Jeff was like, no, man, I don't even want you around. How big of a loser do you have to be? How much of an awful person do you have to be for Jeffrey Epstein to say, I don't want to mess with this dude? Like, y'all can, is this y'all boy? He can't come and kick it with us. All the other degenerates on my island. Yeah, Rhodesia. Let's talk about it, man. Ooh. Here's the thing. I've gotten into it heavy with South Africans because there's one thing that's really weird about interacting with some black folks from South Africa. And I find it um a lot of black folks in America, um we are on stolen land, most likely, right? And so we are the colonial side to the imperialist project, right? Like we're in the colonizers, we're in the colonization part of it. And um a lot of South Africans have this weird reverence for it's almost like it's not even I won't even say a lot of them, but the ones I've interacted with online, the black South Africans specifically have this weird reverence for the apartheid days. It's really weird. It's really weird. I laughed so hard that Jeffrey Epstein pulled a second grade mean girl. Who told Elon about the party? I had one rule: there's no Elon. Right? We could fix this. Just tell him we're not having parties anymore. Jeffrey Epstein did not want Elon Musk around, so we just made him a trillionaire. That's a sign. That's a sign. He is the worst person on the planet. The worst person on the planet thinks that you suck. Yo, what? Black folks really didn't have a choice. We never really have a choice. We are just we're along for the colonial ride. We're along for the ride up. And so that was a conversation I was having with people, talking about what America's doing in the global South and a couple of other things. And they're talking about how, well, Black Americans are complicit. And it's like, what else? Like, how do we opt out of this system? Tell me. I would love to be able to opt out. The way that they even propagandize and the way that they sell military service to our community, they sell it as an economic ladder to escape. When I was in high school, I was an honor student, right? Like I was college bound and everything, and then recruiters were still after me, bro. I took the little ASVAB thing, and they're like, you could come in as an officer and blah blah blah. They were really trying to get me into it and saying, I mean, if you go to college, you're going to waste your time at college. I had an engineering scholarship. They're telling me you're going to waste your time at college when you could come here and get some real life experience, because they were trying to get me into the system. And there's a lot of kids that I went to school with where it was either they were going to go to the military or jail. That's how it was presented to them. That's how it was phrased to them. That's how it was discussed with them. Either you're going to go into the military or you're going to end up in prison. And that's the way that they roped a lot of Black and brown kids into service. Now there's a lot of white kids that got roped into service that way too. And then they get over there and realize it's not as good as it's not what they say it's going to be. And basically they have signed up to be weapons of whatever administration's in. And why are you so sexually attracted? I don't know. Thank you. Epstein didn't want to watch Elon's blackmail videos. Right. Nobody wants Elon around. Like nobody wants Elon around. And I know there's probably mentioned some neurodivergence. I know that's kind of what it is, but he's also a terrible human being. He's a reprehensible, awful human being. And better or worse. But this country's for that, and that's what I'm saying. It's perfect setting for the military. And even right now they're struggling with their numbers, because a lot of families are saying, I'm not conscripting my kid to this. Why would I send my kid over there? Like, I don't want to be tied into Iran or whatever weird spur of the moment kind of military conflict we get drug into over the next couple of years. Yeah. Medicare and college for all because of kneecap, because they have to have a career ladder. They have to have a career ladder to present. Because if you could get all your needs met, you wouldn't be over, and there'd only be a handful of people signing up for the military thing. And like I said, I know a lot of kids my age, a lot of guys my age, ended up joining thinking that it was going to be like, because in the 90s we had gone from, up until the 90s, up until the first Persian Gulf thing, we had gone a long time without any wars for this country. And a lot of people thought it was going to stay that way forever. And then 9/11 happened, and then we just are now in forever wars endlessly. We're always blowing up somebody. No, no. I know it sounds like bullshit, but no, I no. Because at some point, like, what's the for an entire life in exchange and sign inheritance? I don't really care, because there's nothing saying that I'm gonna outlive Elon or whatever. I don't really care about all that stuff. Um, like I said, I think he's a reprobate. I don't trust him around kids. I don't trust him around my kids. Um, it's just a job. Yeah. I think for me, I'm gonna go back to that conversation, but I think he's a reprobate. I've worked around enough. Uh, I did child and family services. I worked around kids that have been abused, neglected, and Elon gives off really weird vibes. So no, I wouldn't have him in my circle. I wouldn't be friends with him. It's easy to say because it'll never happen, but I still wouldn't. Elon's giving me some money, so I'm gonna give him access to my family and be friends with him. Hell no. No. Nobody gave a shit on my service. Biden was a solid president. Not good, not terrible, but average. And so this is what happened here. It's kind of the same thing that bit Obama, really. When and I know this because this is my entry point in the stock market, because I kind of waited for this crash to happen, which sounds weird, but it was true. When George W. Bush destroyed the economy and almost destroyed the world economy under his watch, when that thing almost happened, I had my stock money on the sidelines, and I was kind of holding off on getting into the market. And I got into the market when everything cratered and everything was on the discount. Obama got handed an economy that almost was on the verge of not existing anymore. And that was kind of the first part of his presidency, is fixing this economy that it was completely upended by its own avarice, that's own greed. You look and sound like a lot like Daniel Cormier. Okay. I like Daniel. I like DC. I mess with DC, so I guess that's a compliment. Thank you. But Obama got handed this entire economy burning on fire. That was the world economy almost stopped. Like, I don't think people understand. In 2008, 2007, 2008, 2009, the world economy, the U.S. economy almost stopped. Like, it almost died. Like, it came as close as it could to death. And so Obama was carrying all that. I do think that people, how do I say this delicately? And this goes for Biden to a degree too. I think people kind of oversold how progressive he actually was, because he wasn't necessarily that much of a progressive. But it was something different than what we had been dealing with, which is the coked out rich boy, coked out country club, fake cowboy, rich boy shit that we had with Bush and Cheney. And look at what happened with Biden. Biden got an economy that literally is coming out of another thing as close to an economy can come to dying, like, except on the world stage, as possible. And he had to make things happen. In the stock market was doing things it had never done before. Like, I don't think people understood. The world economy effectively shut down for almost 24 months. The world economy almost shut down for about 24 months. And now you're president. And now your job is the president of the United States, when you are emerging from the world economy stopping and having to do all the quantitative easing, where the feds turn on the money printers and let her rip. and we're going to have to give out money for people to survive. We are essentially forcing money through the economy to keep the heart beating. And now he gets to come in after all that's happened. The Fed still has the money printers churning. Inflation's going up, the cost of living is going up, but worldwide global inflation's going up because a lot of other countries had to do the same level of financial triage by forcing money through the economy. Otherwise, more people were going to die and more businesses would die. And now here, fix all of this. I see it's weird. It's telling because I see a lot of The Big Short, it explains a lot. I see a lot of conservatives is weird because you see them blaming Obama for things that happened when Bush was president. And then also people blaming Biden for things that happened when Trump was president. Like all the money, like they just said, we're going to give all these people free money because it was necessary to keep the economy from having a heart attack and dying during the pandemic. I'm a business owner. I have my little investment portfolio or whatnot, but I do. Before this, I did residential youth care at all levels. I was director of my own program before I decided to go off and start my own business. Yeah, and so I think Biden did get handed the dirty end of the stick. Yeah, I did. I had a normal job prior. I was working group homes and shelter work and shift work and all kinds of other stuff. And I went up through the system. I did case management. Um, I did supervising family support workers. I did all of it. Yeah, not just that. Okay, run it down to me, Maddie. Um, but yeah, I think one of the big things is Obama got handed a lot of fires that needed to get put out. The entire Ukraine thing had been going on. Netanyahu trying to stay out of prison. So he's in, I got to wage war so that they can't remove me from office and put me in jail because they're trying to put him in jail. And so now we have a convenient, never-ending war that he can latch on to. Yeah, the right-wing media, because again, we've gamified this thing where we're not necessarily looking at where the country's going. It's, is my side winning or not? They're not letting them. Yeah, well, that was the real part of it too. I agree. I agree with you on that too. It was a ploy to, we have to control the messaging of in the conversation. A lot of people, and this is what it was, and this is just from the journalist side of me. I think a lot of right-wing media, they were looking to build their platform. They're all looking to do what Tucker Carlson did. They were using Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro as a model. And right now, Turning Point is failing and falling apart, and Ben Shapiro's empire is falling down. I think Matt Walsh is tied to Ben Shapiro. I'm really rooting for them for the whole thing to collapse on their heads. But I think a lot of these right-wing media pundits were realizing how if they could say something shocking enough, they could build an off ramp and start building their own cult-like following and stuff like that. Because the cult of personality around Tucker Carlson is wild, bro. Like, I thought Bill O'Reilly was crazy. And so I think what you had was everybody trying to get the most viral soundbite going that was against Biden and what he was doing so they could build a platform off of it. And then, of course, the billionaires incentivizing, owning Fox and acquiring these news outlets so that they could force their messaging into the pages and onto the screens and stuff like that. There was a lot going on. Epstein. John Jones is an example of why you can't give a 21-year-old kid $1 million contract in Vegas. Yeah, but that's the thing. Ben Shapiro's always been a rich kid. Ben Shapiro's always been a rich kid. He's always been a rich kid. His parents were rich. He's a failed screenwriter who just fell into this right-wing media apparatus because people said, "Oh, he can put some words together. He's glib and he can put words together." He's a dweeb, and he's dweeb, and he's not a likable person. He's a spoiled rich kid. I don't know. I always am on the fence about this. I don't think, and this is where I do think sometimes the left overplays their hand a little bit. Um, I think that um, the way that they handle this entire thing in Israel um, and Palestine, that was a canary in the coal mine for the administration. And ideally, but at the same time, you're heading into campaign season and you need that money. You need that lobbyist money in order to survive. It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situation. But understand this, Netanyahu's at war because that's the only thing that's keeping his ass out of jail. Because Israelis don't like him either. You have your super hardcore Zionist folks that are over there that are all gung-ho about him and everything and have these, super dehumanizing ways that they talk about Palestinians and pretty much everybody else, black people, anybody else that's not them. But by and large, they were trying to get Netanyahu out of office. Like they're having massive protests trying to expel him from office. And so he figured out if I have a war, they can't ever get rid of me. And that's why Israel has been at war with everybody around them for the last 4 years. I don't know about that. Because I almost feel like Israel ends up becoming the red line where people that are self-proclaimed liberals end up doing a lot of really hardline right-wing warhawk shit. And I've seen it. And it's almost like this weird cognitive dissonance where they don't really recognize, yeah, you are being the people that you claim to hate right now. And not really seeing the forest for the trees. I'm not going to get into the October 7th attack because it's going to get my stream taken down about what my thoughts are regarding that entire debacle and entire thing. But I'll just say this. You can't trust Netanyahu. I mean, he is this version. He's the version of Trump, except he's smarter and more calculating and knows that all he has to do is stay at war and they can never remove him from office. I don't know. Here's the thing. I think when we take a label like that and just reduce people down to that, because what we're doing is we're saying, because this is a conversation. I'm using this as an example. There's a conversation about anti-blackness in the left-wing spaces. And there's something to be said about a lot of left-wingers, a lot of leftists are anti-capitalist, but not anti-racist. And they hate capitalism because they feel like they've been robbed and cheated out of an inheritance as white folks in this country. And that defines what their leftism is. It's not about uplifting people as much as getting what's theirs or what they feel this country owes them, and accessing the privileges that their parents and grandparents had. When you start saying that and start challenging that, I can't say with broad brushstrokes because a lot of hyper leftist political action, revolutionary action, black folks were at the forefront of it. And you go to the far left, you're going to find a lot of black folks who were former revolutionaries and stuff. And I kind of come, that without giving away too much, that is partially what I grew up with and where I came from. I don't think that all liberals are warmongers because I don't think people think about their politics on a day-to-day basis in that level of depth. They support what they support. The stuff that they don't know about, they never think about. And I know it's, well, they don't know it, but at the same time, I don't know. I guess for me, when we start talking, like, I don't like, here's the thing. I hate the labeling, the political labeling that we do for people, where libs are this and why are we having, bro, I've walked in and done, like, I've walked in, like, the level of conversations that we're having on this, I've been in business for like 10 years, bro. um, I've negotiated contracts that are in the one shot contracts for a couple of months that are in the five figures deal. And so I'm not motivated by money. I'm motivated by what's going to pay to keep my family living the lifestyle that we have. That's what drives me. The millions and all the other stuff. I'm not really driven by that level of it. I like being able to have a business that works with my brain and I can do my own thing. Um, and so I'm not gonna sell my freedom. Like, I'm not gonna sell my freedom. Like, I've done it where I've been, in, conversations as potentially doing startups and stuff like that. Um, that would be a different level. That'd be a different game. But I'm not interested in that world right now. All right, so yeah, back to the entire wall liberals and warmongers. I don't like the labeling because I know a lot of people who would identify as liberals that they don't really mess with the warmonger, and really realistically they would label themselves liberals, but politically they're actually progressives, or they actually fall into the leftist space, but we only use the words liberal and conservative to identify the political parties. Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people that you would consider leftists would be more classic, in the more liberal kind of thing. Some of the people that we consider leftists would actually be more right wing if we really looked at what they actually really believe. And some people that have the label of liberal would really fall into leftists, except they've been turned off by interactions with leftists. So the labels aren't as useful to me in identifying individual people. We could use them to identify specific political movements or parties or um, groupthink, but when it comes to labeling individual people, I don't know, because people are you know you can take the biggest dove on the planet and you can rig a situation to make them into a war hawk, depending on how personal the stakes are to them. That's how I phrase it. Well, the politicians, like, like, is Trump a conservative? Is he even a Republican? Like, I try to identify what Trump's politics really are, aside from um getting as much extracting. He's a klepto, like, was it kleptocrat? I can't even talk today. Kleptocrat. He's a kleptocrat, stealing as much as he can get his hands on, and he'll agree with anything as long as it wins him the interaction. He'll take any political stance as long as it wins him the interaction. But for the purposes of the label, he is the head of the conservative movement. And that's what I'm saying. That's why the labels are so useless. He's a kleptocrat. He's a thief. That's his political affiliation. How much money can I extract from this thing while I have the power to extract it? That's what his North Star is, whatever will win the interaction. And so when we affix political labels, he's not a Republican, he's not a Democrat, he's a kleptocrat. He wants to steal, he wants to line his pockets. He's a me-servative. Well, and so that's when we started getting into it, because the phrase of the classic liberal, the how do we say it? Neoliberalism, in that regard in America. That's the entire definition in and of itself, you know. And neoliberalism is, by extension, a kind of a conservative ideology. That the letting the market decide everything, right? But then we carve out left and right on it, but nobody really falls into, you know, like we're saying this set of beliefs defines what this person is in this party. And right now, I think we have so many interests in this world, so many personal interests and so many different stakes that people are living by, that makes it very, very difficult to carve out this political thing and say this is what you are cleanly. Like I said, I think what you're seeing, and I think the reaction to like a Biden or whatever is the backlash to the traditional politician, the politician that we all grew up with, um, 80s, 90s, 2000s. He was endemic of the traditional politician. Who do you see taking root now? People that are firebrands, people that Mamdani is one, whereas a non-traditional politician. I think Biden's backlash, a lot of it was he was a traditional politician after we spent 4 years in the arms of a maniac who was trying to steal as much as everything that wasn't nailed down. And he tried to go back to doing the politics of the day as usual, and that ship has sailed. That's why people turned against Pelosi and are mad at Hakeem Jeffries and stuff, because they represent the traditional politician and their fight to return things back to this weird status quo that really is not serving anybody. It's serving some people sometimes. I do believe that there's such thing as bad versus objectively worse. Okay. And I think we are in objectively worse, and we need to get back to at least being bad. Then we can work on getting away from bad. That makes sense. My friend moved to China permanently. How's that going for them? I know a couple people that have lived and worked in China. Let me know how that's going. Okay, so I beat up this entire thing about the Tesla valuation and all that other stuff, SpaceX. That's expected. It's expected. I don't really have any, like, again, if I had to weed out everybody that had weird problematic racism out of public office, if I had to weed out every white politician that's older than 60 that had weird problematic racism, we wouldn't have anybody in, there would be nobody in office right now. I'm just saying. They lost their job due to Trump, so they escaped to China. Oh, wow. A lot of people are fortunate. Yeah, it really did get fortunate. Yeah, but a lot of people did. I look at the active harm. Like, the crime bill was active harm. But even when they dropped the crime bill, a lot of black people were for the crime bill because we have a skewed vision of what policing is in this country and what it actually does. Like, I grew up in neighborhoods where we had to deal with bored cops because there's too many police there. And bored cops generate criminal activity because they got to find something to do to fill their time. And so, they will bother people that are out minding their own business. But, yeah. I mean, here's the thing. People still idolize Reagan. Like, conservatives love Reagan. Reagan was one of the biggest bigots you're ever going to find. And so here's the thing. I don't necessarily view electoral politics. Like, I don't understand the American idolification of contemporary American politics. Be honest with you. I don't understand why people treat it like we have to elect our role models, or we have to elect people that be 100% in 100% alignment with all times. I do. Yeah, I'm pragmatic in the sense of you vote for the person that's going to do you the least amount of harm, and that's it. I don't think that there's any utility in trying to make this person that's running for office into my idol or um, my role model or anything like that. Vote for the person that's doing the least amount of harm. I think, to be honest with you, that's where we get this weird, problematic nature of politics, where it ends up becoming a cult of personality, and you do all this investing in somebody politically, and then they get in there and just you know, do what politicians do. Just put in the person that's going to do the least amount of material harm to your community, and you start there. I think what happens is specifically with that crime bill, um, and now you're talking to somebody I grew up in the crack era, right? And a lot of older black people, like when I look at my mom's age, she had lived through the civil rights era. She was a teenager during segregation. And so as an adult, she's coming into the post segregation world with a black son and seeing, um, gangs move in and, drug crime go up and things along those lines and scared people make decisions. Like I said, my mom, it's crazy because my mom, she did, a lot of work with the Black Panthers when she was younger. But she hit that age where she's like, I'm looking out for my son. And she started buying into the hype of what the crime bill actually was offering. And then even before they voted for it, she was against it. But she ended up getting sucked into this is, we have to get the gang members off the streets and the gang members are the problem, as opposed to looking at the society that enabled them to make a black market for drugs, you know? And so a lot of older black people who were emerging from the civil rights era, they made a decision out of fear and endorsed that crime bill. It was popular. And they didn't see the deleterious effects of it because they were blaming the criminals who were people that were my age and a little bit older, were kids themselves, are blaming them for the conditions of society they grew up in, not one that had been in a bunch of recessions. The job market was stalled. There weren't really any pathways out. It was just this weird hopelessness that came from the late 80s and drifted into the 90s. Um, and a general malaise and apathy in Black Gen X and younger millennials and stuff, they didn't really look at the real root cause of it. As young as I need to be. I do, you know, I'm not scared of aging. Like I never really did the scared of aging thing. I like what I like. I read comic books. I watch watch old cartoons. I watch new cartoons. Like I still do all the stuff that, and I still have fun, play video games with my kids and stuff. I don't really worry about the age stuff as much. So anyway, I am way off what my notes were and what this show was supposed to be. I did not This went a lot of other places. So I'm gonna save a lot for next week. Um the thing I do want to, you can stick around if you guys want to, if you want to. Um I want to talk about this idea that I heard somebody mentioned that ADHD is a superpower. And it just kind of pissed me off. The ADHD is a superpower. Everybody has ADHD. These kind of phrasings where you minimize the impact of what ADHD and how it impacts people. I don't like that kind of stuff. So I wanted to talk a little bit about it. Yeah, do powerlifting and stuff. I like to lift heavy things in my downtime, taking some time off to heal up from some injuries and stuff. But yeah, I do lift heavy things. Um, for fun. Like, I actually got invited to lift at a meet a couple years ago. And the only reason why I didn't go to the meet is because I ended up hurting myself in the training process. But yeah, I haven't been in a while, but I'm planning on going back here pretty shortly. getting restarted again, because I normally take some time off around the beginning of summer, and then I'm back in towards the end of summer, and that carries me through the fall and winter. So let's talk about it real quick. Because I'll do the adult contemporary hip hop thing a little bit later. Um, I have an issue when people talk about ADHD as a superpower. Just because we take ADHD and we flatten it and make it like this beneficial thing to have, and we end up leaving a lot of the people that are still struggling with the day-to-day application um, of it. They're left struggling to feel like they're a failure because they're not able to maximize their superpower or play to their advantage. There are certain advantages that my brain gives me, but a lot of it comes through weird maladaptive things that I've had to do to adjust to a life with ADHD. And a lot of the stuff I had to do, wasn't necessarily the right thing to do. It was what I had to do to survive. And so a lot of survival instincts that I've honed throughout the years come from adjusting to a world that's not necessarily suited for the way my brain works. Um, I'm typing something here, guys. Hold on one second. I feel like when we do that, a lot of times we end up like people that are seeking out help. We can discourage people from seeking out help because they're like, well, if I could just find a way to make my ADHD work for me. Buffalo, DC. Thank you. My country, ADHD is a disorder that only can diagnose in like kids. Yeah, I got diagnosed as a kid. I can give you a little bit of a backstory. Uh, I'm adopted, and I got adopted as an infant, and I didn't hit any of my speech milestones on time. And so they started preparing my mom for a child that was mute, like nonverbal, a nonverbal kid. And then one day I just started talking in full sentences. And so they always knew that my brain worked a little bit different. And um, early 80s, right? Um, Mom gets me diagnosed, does the entire psychological thing, ADHD. She knew I had it. The biggest thing was, as a black kid in America, if you have ADHD, you get tracked into all the remedial non-college bound courses. It's like a death sentence to your school career back then. You didn't get help. They dropped you. They decided that they were just going to drop you in remedial courses, and my mom wasn't going for it. So my diagnosis never really got mentioned throughout my school career, and I was completely unaware of it till I got to be an adult, struggling mightily with a regular uh, case management job that I always felt like I was underwater in, and fighting every way to get organization and everything else. And so um, that was a challenge. So I had figured out a way. I had an engineering scholarship that I was not focused enough since I was trying to basically raw dog ADHD through college. An engineering scholarship that went away, that I worked my ass off to get, um, and a couple other doors that closed for me. And I was just kind of floundering by the time I was 30. And I went and got diagnosed before I actually had the conversation with my mom. And my mom's like, "Oh yeah, I've always known you had ADHD like this. You didn't know? Like, you never told me." So anyway, um, but yeah, it affects adults. Like, there's a lot of adults out there that have untreated ADHD that are struggling, and people are like, "Well, they just can't get right." Well, a lot of it has to do with untreated stuff. I work case management. I work with people that have been in jail or people that have struggled their entire lives in different capacities. And then you go back and look at their records and see, oh, they were diagnosed with ADHD. They never got treated for it. Or they have schizophrenia that's undiagnosed, or they are dealing with massive depression that's undiagnosed, major depressive disorder, all these other things that are completely undiagnosed and untreated, and people wonder why they're having a tough time adjusting to life in the world. Best PR. All right. So this is a little bit off task, but I want to finish my show up here real quick. So I can give you my PRs. I haven't done a PR on flat bench in a while just because regular bench press messes with my shoulder. Last time I actually did a serious PR, I was like at 365, I want to say. Um Typically I do dumbbell press, and so I'm anywhere normally I'm messing around doing dumbbell press with the 110s, 115s, 120s in that range. Um Deadlift, I believe my PR I was about because I was just at some point I was just putting weights on. Um about 620, 625, I think. That might have been 615 on deadlift. Squat is about 495, but I wasn't really like I had more in the tank. I can probably get, I'm probably around 525 on squat if I really wanted to push it. But I don't like right now at a point where I'm not necessarily doing PRs as much anymore. I just go in there and lift heavy things. But yeah, those are the last times I really tracked my PRs. So, like I said, I understand why people are saying ADHD is a superpower. They're trying to fight the shame. They're trying to tell the kids they're not broken. They're trying to tell adults that, hey, this is actually a strategic advantage for you. Okay. ADHD is more than I just get distracted sometimes. It's literally having a brain that will not listen to what you tell it to do. Okay. I have the inattentive subtype. And so my thing was always being a daydreamer when I was a kid. I could daydream, not paying attention in class and still pass with high grades. And so I wasn't lashing out or problematic in class most of the time. I wasn't hyperactive in class most days. Um, but I had my moments. But you know, the real thing about it is just being distracted is not ADHD. Just being bored at work is an ADHD. Being slightly disorganized is an ADHD. Forgetting your keys once or twice is not ADHD. ADHD is not a vibe. It's not an aesthetic. It's not a personality thing. Um, and the idea that when we say everybody has a little bit of ADHD, it makes the condition sound like a made up thing that people haven't had their entire lives ruined by for not getting treatment for. Okay. It makes people that know you and love you feel like you are exaggerating what you're experiencing. So yeah, ADHD does have some strengths. The strengths aren't a given all the time. Like I'm super creative. I can be funny if I need to be. I can solve problems under really strenuous situations. Like, what was it? The one, um, you know, staying calm in situations where life or death in the balance. Like I had to talk a kid out of the middle of the busiest street in our city. Um, a suicidal kid who was trying to lay down in traffic during rush hour in on the busiest street in our city. And I had to go out there and remain calm enough to talk him out of it while my staff is freaking out. I've had kids try to break each other's arms, breaking somebody's arm, trying to break somebody's arm, and I had to talk him out of it, and staff is freaking out around me. So I can stay really pretty relaxed in absolute chaotic situations. But when things are calm and collective, that's where my mind absolutely just falls apart. Um, I can hyper focus in the right conditions, and lock in and get things done. Um, but yeah, those are my strengths. But the cost is real. Time blindness right now, it's 9:31. I've been sitting here talking for almost 2 hours. Thank you. Uh, Thank you. That was part of my job though. Like, my job is to keep him from doing something to get himself hurt or getting other people hurt, you know. But time blindness is real. It may not seem like it, but I do deal with a lot of emotional dysregulation, specifically when it comes to feeling rejected, or feeling the feelings of rejection, and get super hypersensitive to that. In some cases, other times I don't really give a shit. Um, Task initiation is hard for forgetting things that I should remember. Being impulsive, making impulsive decisions spur of the moment. Okay. And burnout is the real thing, because having to put on the mask and interact with normal society is a challenge. Um, and so I think the thing is, we got to wrap our minds around it. Like, this entire ADHD thing is a superpower. I don't like when we say that. I think we can say it gives you some benefits or whatnot. Um, I think it's more useful to ask, how can we support you? Like, if you know somebody with ADHD, instead of saying, man, ADHD is a superpower and we're all ADHD, how can we support you? What are the things you're strong at? What are the things you need supported? I feel like that's a more useful conversation to have than this. ADHD is this magic superpower that makes you super, you're able to get done with a lot of stuff and all this other things. Like, it's calling it a superpower can put pressure on people to perform like their disability is a talent. Like, you could just turn it off and on. So that's what it is. I'm gonna wrap up here because I've been going a long time. I appreciate y'all tuning in. I'm actually gonna be jumping on here later on this week on a game of Overwatch, testing out the new character and answering questions, and maybe even talking about some of what's on the rest of my outline. So tune in if you want to get some marketing business chit chat, or you want to talk about comics or whatever. So I'll be on. I haven't decided what date it is, but it's coming. Probably going to be like Thursday or Friday. So I'll get up with y'all later. Thanks for tuning in. Learning While Dad. Peace.